Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another segment of The Journey, a meeting of the minds. I am your host, Kimberly Collins, the Educated Natural, CEO and founder of 10 Marketing LLC, located at www.10marketingllc.com. Welcome to another phenomenal segment. I am so happy that you are tuning in tonight. If you have people that are not ready to tune in, call them, email them, put it on social media, let them know the journey of Meeting of the Minds is live right now. Okay, before I even get started, I have to send out a huge whoop to my co-host, Miss Jennifer Foxworthy, who, as you all know, is away for the next 6 weeks. She is actually in college classes right now this term, and she has to be there face-to-face. So we have to send her a large, loud shout out saying we miss you and we know you'll be catching the replay. But don't worry, everyone. Like I told you all, I have a special surprise for you tonight. I have not one, not two, but three, yes, 3 powerhouse gentlemen who are joining me tonight on the panel. Now, tonight we're going to be discussing, as you can tell by the title of this video, we're going to be discussing the impact of fatherlessness and the solutions. But before I start my complete intro into this topic, I have to just go on and let you guys know a little bit about my special co-host. First up is none other than Mr. Arian Tyson. Arian Tyson is an aspiring motivational speaker and author. He believes that life should be lived with an unapologetic purpose. This St. Louis, Missouri native is a man on a mission to help others overcome their fears by empowering them to not only heal from their brokenness, but become all they should be. Give it up, everybody, for Mr. Arian Tyson. Next is none other than the fatherpreneur himself, Mr. Rodney Kellum. Rodney is a recovering workaholic. I think we've all been there, right? He has been working smart instead of hard for 2 years now, and he feels that it is great. He is a follower of Jesus Christ. He is a husband to his beautiful wife, Crystal. He is a father to his 5-year-old son, Randall, and his newborn daughter, Robin. Although he went to college, worked hard, and achieved several of his career goals, he never found himself feeling truly fulfilled. He was always tired, he wasn't meeting his financial goals, and he rarely got to spend any quality time with his family and loved ones. That is, until he reached complete exhaustion and financial depletion. Also known as rock bottom, Rodney finally decided to change his life. Now, Rodney is an online entrepreneur who has a real work-life balance. Go Rodney. Rodney also has a passion to help other overworked dads break free from the dream-killing employee mindset that used to keep him trapped in a cycle of unemployment, broke, and unfulfillment. Give it up, everybody, for Mr. Rodney Kellum. Last but certainly not least is my eclectic friend himself, Mr. Jason Hodge. Jason has a huge bio, let me tell you. Jason loves to help his clients figure stuff out that's going to make them money, monetize their events, create sales funnels, you name it, he is the man, okay? Now, according to Jason, he is very eclectic, like I've already told you. That goes for his friends, his likes, the industries that he works in, contracted for, being a part of, even his taste in foods, clothes, and topics that he engages in. Jason believes that there is a purpose for everything, but the key is in finding what your purpose is and then doing everything within your power and those around you to live on purpose. Jason believes that you can't separate what you do ultimately from who you are. So it's critical to align everything up as quickly as you can, live life more fully, and have a business that doesn't drain you. I must agree. Jason always seeks to add value to helping those around him and helping them achieve their highest selves and optimum outcomes. And yes, Jason is eclectic, and he really, truly loves what he does. He has many interests such as cuisine, travel, social media, working with nonprofits. He loves music, and the list goes on. So help me, everyone, welcome Mr. Jason Hodge. Okay, gentlemen, I've shared with everyone that know me personally that when it comes to the subject of fatherlessness, it touches me in a total different way than a lot of other people that I've had this conversation with. Those of you who've watched my previous intro video, I shared with you that I never had the pleasure of meeting or having been told who my biological father is. And unlike a lot of the things I've read statistically, I am totally the opposite of what the statistics say I should be because of that. Now, tonight, as we go into this discussion, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be said that's going to touch a lot of you positively and negatively. But I want you, and I encourage you to do like you do when you're, those of you who go to church. When the pastor is up there preaching, he's all in your business, just say ouch and then get better. That's what I want you to do. So tonight, without me dragging this out any further, I'm ready to jump right into this. How about it, gentlemen?
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it. Now, let's look at some stats, some statistics, okay? Now, I ran across a few, as I'm sure you all have, and there was quite a few that kind of stuck out to me a little bit. For instance, it says that 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes, and that is according to the U.S. Department of Health census. And they're saying that this is 5 times the average. 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes. 85% of all children who show behavior disorders come from fatherless homes. 71% of high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. When it comes to education, fatherless children are twice as likely to drop out of school. However, children with fathers who are involved are 40% less likely to repeat a grade in school. Now, when it comes to statistics, there's a lot of them out there, a lot. So I know each one of you have your own statistics that you've run across. Please share those and just give me your individual opinions of what's being said statistically. Jason.
Okay, well, you know, it's kind of interesting. The statistics that you're bringing up, I did not realize that I actually fell into that statistic. Like when it talked about high school dropout, you know, wow. I'm in that 71%. And the dropping out of high school occurred after I lost my grandfather. So, you know, I'm sitting here and I'm resonating with what it is that you're reading, and I'm like, oh, okay, wow, didn't know that is a statistic, that was such a large statistic, and that was due to the absenteeism, the absence of a father in a home. Very interesting. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And wow, this is interesting because this is actually the first time that I'm saying this, you know, in a public forum, that is. Right. And I have no qualms about talking about dropping out of high school. You know, I went back, finished it up and all of that. However, during that particular time in my life, there was so many things going on. That was the first death that we had in our family. And so for that year, after my grandfather had passed away, I was totally in shock, did not realize it. And so it wasn't until a year later that I even shed a tear. So there,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I just shut down, but I continued to move through life as if nothing took place. And so I think that one of the things, and this is why fatherhood is such an important and integral part of my life right now. You know, I've got 3 children. Is because I remember what it was like not having a father, and also having to go out to glean aspects of fatherhood from my friends' fathers, from different relatives. My grandfather was like, that was my pillar of a father,
Right.
although he lived like some 2,000 miles away. So we would see him maybe once a year over the summertime. You know, so yeah, I'm listening to this, taking in your statistics and saying, okay, so how does that apply to me? You know, and I'm sure that other people who are listening to this right now may be reflecting on their own lives and saying, okay, how does this apply to me, or how does this apply to folks that I know who are in the fatherlessness situation?
Absolutely, absolutely. Arian.
Well, for me, I would say that, can you hear me?
Yes, you're fine.
Okay, for me, I have the privilege of being able to say that I actually grew up with my father. You know, I would say I'm one of the fortunate ones. You know,
That's great. Yes.
growing up in the inner city of St. Louis, you know, I actually grew up around several kids in my neighborhood that were fatherless, and I saw the different aspect of how I was raised and how they were raised. Some of them did not even live to see 21 because they didn't have that male influence in their life. They got caught up in the streets. They got on drugs, dealing with guns. One person that comes to my mind actually got killed right around the corner from the neighborhood I grew up in. You know, and was only 21 years old, still had his whole life ahead of him. And the thing about it is, but one thing that I can say, because I know a lot of men that have grown up without a father in the house, but that never stopped them from becoming a great father. And a lot of times people use the fact that they didn't have that father or that role model in the house as an excuse and as a crutch to why they can't be all that they should be. But when you want something bad enough,
say it.
As one of my mentors say, when you really want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, you're going to do what you need to do. You're not going to make excuses, and you're just going to get it done.
Okay, it looks like we lost him for a second there.
Yeah, it looks like he froze.
Okay, am I cool now?
Are you back?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. What I was saying was, people use that as a crutch, and the thing about it is, we can't continue to use that as a crutch, because when you get older, them excuses run out, because you got to get to the place of space where you take accountability for the decisions that you make. You can't continue to live your life off of what mommy and daddy taught you. If daddy was there, you can't use that as an excuse no more. So for those men that I know, and even some of these men on the panel, or those who grew up without their fathers, but yet they're still are fathers to their children. They didn't use it as a crutch because they made a decision that they're going to be the best father that they can possibly be. But not only that, they're going to be able to give their children what their father never gave them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'll let Rodney talk, but you know, I've got to address a few things that Arian said. You know, love what you said there, Arian, by the way.
Appreciate it.
Okay, Rodney, we went over some statistics, and I want your opinion of the statistics and how you feel, about them.
So here's what I was thinking when I was reading through that thread you guys all shared earlier about the statistics about fatherlessness. And the first thing that came to my mind, it may sound weird to some people, but my wife works in the medical field, and she brings home some statistics of her own. And she tells me that smoking increases your risk of everything. Now, why does that make sense? It is my opinion, and in my heart I believe it's a fact, that fatherlessness increases the risk of everything. If that makes sense, we just talked about, how much most of high school dropouts have no fathers in their lives. How young ladies become pregnant early and they don't have fathers in their lives. how, you know, some young men die early, end up in a life of crime because they don't have fathers in their life. How some people grow up with bad eating habits because they never had a man to show them how to buy groceries and cook properly. That's, again, fatherlessness. Now, here's something that I spoke on recently. I wrote a blog about it, where I make a clear differentiation between father, the term father, and dad. See, I grew up with a dad, meaning he wasn't my biological father. He wasn't sold me as a seed, but he was the one that was always there for me as an example, how to be a man, how to be a loving man. So not only do people not have fathers, they're suffering from fatherlessness, but they don't have dads either. So what the goal is to help fathers, men that become fathers, also be great dads. Because my definition of dad is the one that's there for you, is the one that's an example, the one that sacrifices for you. See, any male with sperm can become a father. And even though a father is supposed to be present, we all know that doesn't happen very much. And we'll probably talk about this later, what causes fatherlessness, but it is an epidemic, just like cigarette smoke. It's legal. It's not illegal to not be a father, but it increases your chance of everything negative in your life. And as a person, as you become mature, you simply have to make a decision. Am I going to go with the example of what to do, or the example of what not to do?
Absolutely. Jason, I know you wanted to follow up with some more points.
Yeah. Okay. Now, a couple of things. One of the things that Arian was talking about in relation to making the excuses and things like that, and whereas I believe that he is right on point, but you've got to also look at it from the perspective of Arian had that role model in his life that set a certain standard.
Right.
And so he's pulling from a wealth of experience with that father that he had. Now, when we look at the contrast, where you've got kids who are growing up, you know, young ladies and young men who are growing up without that father or that father figure, then when it comes to certain standards, certain things that they are out looking for, because, you know, with the young males, you see them getting into different communities, whether it's gangs or whatever, because they ultimately are looking for that father role model. So this community takes them in their vulnerableness in order to say, okay, we'll be your family. And that's because they're looking for that void to be filled. So if you don't have the ability to pull from male role models in your life, like I had the ability to pull from male role models even though they were far removed, you know, living in Michigan when I was in California, but still knowing that they were there, it provided a certain sense of stability. Also, those male role models, I know that they had a certain standard. So the infusion of that standard while I was not directly in their presence still carried through to other things that I did in my life. My mom, an amazing woman, you know, and to this day, I try to fathom how she was able to do all that she did for us, keep a roof over our heads, you know, and allow us to live pretty good lives. You know, the sacrifices that she made, I didn't realize this until I became a father myself, just the dynamics involved in raising kids and also the deficits that I have as a father that are causing me to go into books and start looking for solutions to challenges that I run into in raising my kids and saying, okay, so let's see, this is a new area. Now, I know how to be a disciplinarian. I mean, that's just, you know, I don't know if it's inborn in me, but I know how to have my kids toe the line. You know, so my kids, every time we go out, they're just very well acclimated to the environment, and we always get great compliments on them. And I talk to them a lot. But this is a response that, through I think a lot of thought work, saying, okay, well, what am I missing? What did I miss? And what can I impart to them? Which I think one of your questions was going to be, Can a person who did not have a father in their life give something that they did not themselves get?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, Arian mentioned something that I thought was quite interesting. One word, and that word was accountability. And when it comes to being a father or mother, when it comes to children, we all have a responsibility, i.e. accountability, of how we handle that role. And my question here is, do you think that fathers, when you think of fatherlessness and the statistics and the rates that it is growing now, do you think that maybe accountability is one of the main reasons why men find it easy to run away versus women?
I think that that's maybe too general of a term, that, men in general find it easier to run away, because if the man has dealt with accountability, whether it be from their family unit, their community, or whatever, then I don't think that it's as easy to, quote unquote, run away from that. I think, a matter of fact, there's certain aspects that would be embraced. You would seek that out just to make sure that you are kept on pace with what it is that you say that you want to do. Now, for somebody who has never had that in their life, yeah, I think that that is a very uncomfortable position to be in, because now you are giving over your power, if you will, to somebody else, for them to say, hey, you know what, you said you're going to do this, why didn't you do it? And to actually have to take that. So if you have not experienced that, it's a hard thing.
I agree. I agree. Now, Arian, out of all of us, and I haven't heard Rodney's father, history, if he was raised with his father or not, and I hope he will address that. But can you give us some insight as to, like, I was like you, my grandfather was my father figure. And unfortunately, at the age of 13, my age of 13, that is, he passed away. So I lost the one that I considered to be my father. Now, early in my life, my mom did remarry, and I did have a stepfather, but he'll fit into the next topic we're going to go into, and that is a father figure that's present, but that's disconnected. How was your father? Did you have your biological father in the home?
Yes.
Well, my whole setup, that's a whole nother book with my dad and my mom's relationship. So my biological father I've never met. And so the man who stepped in and played the role of dad was actually here visiting from Las Vegas. He's a major help right now. James Bailey. I love him dearly. So he lived always in a different city. And I always, we lived in Southern California. He lived in Northern California. When I was older, we moved to Northern California, but he lived in a different part. So for the most part, we never lived in the same home as a child for more than a summertime or, for a shorter period of time. But he was always the one I could count on when I truly needed him. And if I was acting up and my mother got tired of my brother and I, one phone call to him, James, you're acting up. A quick little talk over the phone, and we'd have trembling lips, knowing that by the time, when we go visit him, we might have 3 whoopings stored up, which is another topic we can get into later. So I didn't have that daily father figure in my life, but it was like he was always present. My dad was always present and is always present in my life. So it's like I can get a taste of what it feels like to not have the man in the home, but I don't have that. I never had that feeling of I'm missing out, but yet and still those around me, just like Arian's story, I grew up between Pasadena, California and Sacramento. And the part of Pasadena was much more like, boys in the hood type of deal. So I saw fatherlessness rampant. I saw the men coming and going from the girlfriends' lives. I saw the girl down the street that every 9 months had a new baby. That looked different than the other baby, that collected welfare. I saw the effects of men who had no guidance, could only look up to their OG, their Crip or blood mentor, their big brother, their big homie. I saw what happens when there's no man and people turn to the bottle, they turn to the needle, they turn to the smoke. You know, there's always a need that must be filled, and sometimes, a lot of the time, it's filled by the wrong thing, a horrible substitute, which again causes death. Like I said earlier, fatherlessness increases your chances of everything, increases your chances of addiction, increases your chances of dropping out of school, increases your chances of becoming a parent early, increases your chances of early death. So the issue, the epidemic is such, like I can sort of, you know, tell by listening to you, Kimberly, that, you know, especially with women, you know, fathers have a different effect on women than on men. We need different things from them, just like you do in a spouse when you get older. And I can hear already the effect it had on you. You really losing so far 3 of your father figures, and there's a sense of, I have a daughter now. She's 4 months old, and already you can see the differences between boy and girl. I have a son and I have a daughter, and you can see that sort of need of constant security more than my son needs. That the way she looks at me is a different look. And well, I know we can probably we can talk about the effects of fatherlessness on women versus men, but in general, it's not positive.
Right. I totally agree. You know, when I think about the difference that fatherlessness has on males versus females, I can use my own home as an example. My brothers, I have 2 older brothers, and I have a sister that was a stillborn. So that left my mom with 3 surviving children, 2 boys and 1 girl. I'm the youngest and the only girl. With that being said, all 3 of us have different fathers. The unique thing is, neither one of us had our fathers in our lives. My father was never identified. My oldest brother's father was identified, but he lived in New York and we lived in North Carolina, so my mom separated from him very early due to unresolved issues between them 2, so my brother didn't have his father in his life. My second oldest brother's father died when he was a baby. So all 3 of us turned out uniquely different. But as my brothers became adults, they started to repeat the same behavior that their fathers did to their children. They weren't there. They aren't there. And me not knowing who my father is, being a girl, I handled it totally different. My life turned out totally different than theirs did. If I look at the statistic, like Jason mentioned earlier, I'm totally opposite. I didn't drop out of high school, you know, and it wasn't until I became a wife did the word father even, you know, mean anything to me. This is like the first time, and I've been a mother for 16 years, this is the first time that I've gotten a chance to see what it is to, because I have 2 daughters, my husband and I. And this is the first time I get to see what it looks like from a child's perspective to have their father in their life. And it makes me wonder, wow, I really missed out on some things, because as a child, I was just like, I have my mom and that's all that mattered to me. So, but when I look at my daughters, and like you said, Rodney, when my daughters look at my husband, that's like their king. That's like daddy. You know, that's their world. So for me, being a fatherless daughter, to see them grow up with their father is a beautiful thing. And I think it's very important that men understand that every child, regardless if it's a male or a female, they need that connection with their father, because when you're not there, that child misses something. At some point in their life, it's going to come back and they're going to see something and be like, wow, I never had that. And it's going to impact them negatively or positively. We as parents have to understand we have a huge responsibility here. We have a huge role here, because you're running away, you're not being there for whatever reason. You may think you're in the clear, but I can tell you from what I've seen my other family members go through and what my brothers are going to have to face one day, and that is the conversation you're going to have with that now probably adult. You're going to have to answer those questions. Was I not good enough? Because that was one of the #1 questions for me that came up as an adult. Like, why weren't you there? did my mother not tell you? What happened? I have so many questions that are unanswered because my mother is no longer here to answer them. So I really want everyone out there to think, and I'm going to get on my women a little bit later, because I have some things I need to directly say to you, woman to woman, about this issue. But what I want everyone to understand, that there is definitely a difference. There is a huge difference of the impacts that when you think about males and females, it impacts us totally different.
Mm-hmm. When you
I
talked about
add a story.
Go ahead, Rodney.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rodney.
Well, yesterday I was almost involved and felt a little bit like a rock star, and I'll explain why. I was at the doctor with my dad. He had a doctor's appointment, and I was holding my daughter. Now, in my mind, this is absolutely nothing special. It's what I'm supposed to do. It's what I enjoy doing, comforting my daughter, helping her go to sleep, rocking her to sleep. But inside the doctor's office, there were one nurse in particular. And she saw me holding my daughter and looking at her, talking to her while she goes to sleep. And she began to just really gush.
Mm-hmm.
Like gush. And it became, she actually got on the phone and was calling other coworkers to come up in here and see this father holding his daughter. And I thought to myself, I said, why is this such an amazement to them? Shouldn't this be normal? Mm-hmm. And then I thought, no, it's not normal. Mm-hmm. A lot of fathers do not have an emotional connection, a physical connection to their daughters, and women naturally love to see that. Mm-hmm. And she didn't stop. So after she called another coworker, then she called another coworker. Come see this. I was like, am I an oddity? I got a little angry real quick. Then I realized, oh no, this is a good thing. Yeah, I love my daughter. So that just goes to your point of the importance of fathers, especially the daughters. We'll talk about sons later. But I just wanted to share that story because it really just sort of blew my mind on the effect of a present and engaged father, how it has, so I said to my wife jokingly, if I was single, my daughter would be a chick magnet. Like, I wouldn't have any issues. All I have to do is get the baby carrier on my chest and just walk around with no ring on, and I'm good.
Jason.
That's good. Yeah. I was chiming in on when you talked about how your daughters look at your husband, right? And it's kind of interesting because, not interesting, I keep on saying that word. Well, that's one of my favorite words. But, I notice how my sons, how they look at me, how we interact with each other, right? Mm-hmm. They're always, Daddy, can we play this? Can we do this? And, it actually can be a little challenging at times when I'm trying to get work done, because, of course, I work at home. And so that means that they have access to me 24/7, which right. means that at times I have to deliberately step away from my work in order to fill up their tank. Right. That's a new learning for me because, for one, I come from a family where our work ethic is just crazy, right? And West Indian at that. So remember back in the day when there was a show called In Living Color and they said, okay, I'm a doctor or a lawyer or this, that, and the other, right?
Right.
They all said, you only got 5 jobs, see, you lazy bum, right? So it's kind of like that because, my great-grandfather, he wore many hats in the islands. I mean, from being the baker to the builder to, there's structures that he has put up that are still standing in the islands today. And so I'm thinking that, at one time I was working 4 jobs and I was sleeping 2 hours a night. And, of course, this was before I was married, but still it was just trying to fill up those hours with stuff to do.
Right.
And so now that I am married and I've got kids, my mind at times goes back into that, okay, just drive it through, work, stay on that computer, push stuff out. And it wasn't until I got sick where I couldn't do that, where I had time to stop and think, okay, you're about to check out of here and your kids really aren't going to know you. They're going to know that, yeah, Daddy worked a lot. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, I did not want that to be the last thing they remembered. Now, I didn't know if I was going to survive or not, but I said, I got to do something about this. So it is like I almost feel like I should go be in some type of 12-step program, because every day I have to remind myself, okay, step away from the computer, put the books down, and then play with them, sit and talk with them, and we have a great time when we do. So at nighttime, I will lay down and camp with them until they fall out to sleep. Unfortunately, I fall out to sleep too and wake up in the morning, but that's the thing. So yeah, so that it's important. It's very important.
Absolutely. Arian, when it comes to the difference or the impact that it has on males and females, I know you shared before about your fatherless situation, but you was one of the few of us that was blessed enough to have your father in the home. Would you say it made a great impact, maybe compared to some of your peers or people that you know in your family that may have the opposite?
I would say, based on conversations that I've had with family members and peers of mine that did not grow up with fathers,
right,
I would say that according to them, it's a great impact. However, and like, let me preface my comments by saying that this is in no way, being disrespectful to my father, because I love my father. My father is an integral part of me. My father is a driving force and is a big part of my why. And if you're someone that's like an entrepreneur, like all of us on this panel, you know the importance of having a why.
Right.
And so for me, growing up in a two-family household, I grew up with a father who basically was very traditional, who he went to work, he was the provider, he paid all the bills, kind of like traditional gender roles. The problem with that is I know how to manage a household financially, but I had to learn how to bring that emotional stability into the equation, because my father didn't teach me that. My father didn't teach me that. My father very seldomly told me how proud he was of me. But he'll go tell my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, but he never addressed it with me.
Right.
And the thing about it is, if anyone that knows me on a personal level, I'm really big on affirmation. And the thing is, that's actually one of my love languages. And at times I feel like my father doesn't know that, although we lived in the same household for all these years. But he basically provided, he basically paid the bills, and so on and so forth. But the reason that I learned how to give of myself, how to say what was on my mind, how to speak from my heart, articulate and eloquate myself, was because of being around other men and being around women. Because naturally I sit back and I observe, just kind of like how I've been doing tonight. I sit back and observe and listen before I speak. And so sometimes there are certain things that just don't need to be said. But then there are certain things where if you have an opportunity to tap into someone's pulse, you got to seize that opportunity. And fathers in general don't know how to do that, especially when they were never taught that. Now, I'm of the mindset there's no excuse for me, because with the way that technology is, you can find out stuff with the snap of a finger.
Absolutely.
As far as this is what you should do, this is what you may want to reconsider. But you have to be able to make
we lost him.
Yeah, he got stuck again.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
I think,
Yeah,
there
you
you
left
go.
off with you have to be able to make, and then you froze.
Okay, you have to be able to basically make a decision that you're going to be not only the best version of who you are, but you're not going to, hold on to your past like a crutch. You can't continue to do that anymore, especially when you become a father. Because the child did not ask to be here.
Absolutely.
So, it's like the buck stops here, right? So we just have to really understand it. But I'm thankful for the foundation that my father was able to lay. But I'm not going to say that, of course, because I had a mama and a daddy that I had, that I had everything.
Right.
But it has helped me become the man I am today. So I'm grateful for it. I'm not one of these ungrateful people that just, forget the foundation, because to me, you can't destroy the foundation and expect the building to stand.
Mm-hmm.
Great points, Arian. Great points, because that was always my question was, people who have their fathers, do they have it all? And some of the people that I've spoken with about this particular topic, they've shared with me, yes, my father was in the home, but he wasn't connected. So there was a lot of times I wanted to have a conversation with my father, but it was like a wall was there. Like there were certain things I couldn't go and talk to him about because either he would shut me out or he was just too busy for me. So I felt, yes, my father was in the house, but we didn't have a relationship. He taught me certain things, but there was still something missing there. So I'm glad you put that out there. I'm glad you talked about that. Now, Rodney, I know your fatherpreneur yourself. I know you can relate to what Arian just said.
Yeah. There's many layers to that, and I really feel like this could be like a mini series on what we're talking about.
Yes.
We can narrow it down to just men. We can narrow it down to black men, because that's a whole nother story on our history with being disconnected with family, how our family's been torn apart. When we were brought to this country, and how that was really passed down, because Arian's story is not rare, especially if you have a father over the age of 50. If the further you go back, the harder it is for a man in America, and especially a black man in America, to understand, to have ever received affection from a man, and know how to give affection to a son, or a daughter for that matter. So, my grandparents were born, they grew up during the Depression era. My father was born he's 54, so he was born in the 60s. Now, my dad is rare, because the biggest credit I give my dad was showing me how to be a loving man. Now, when I got around other men, boys, young men and men as I grew older, that may or may not have had their father, they don't have that story. Arian's story is actually, to me, in my experience, the norm. For men, the people that had fathers in their life, the men didn't know how to show affection because that wasn't manly. They were raised to be the provider. Right. You put food on the table. You provide a roof over their head. And my dinner better be ready when I get home. Like, that was the school they were raised in. And it's like that saying, they did the best they could.
Right.
If you don't know better, you can't do better. Right. So now we have the generation that, if you're under 50, that may have grew up or went to college or high school with computers, that things are moving faster, and you see the effect of inaffectionate men, how emotionally dead that they can become, and the effect that has on their children, and they grow up to be emotionless people. And the things that emotionless people can do are very scary. And so I think there's a movement amongst men, especially amongst fathers in this generation, 30s and 40-year-old men, that sort of understand that we miss out on that much needed affection. It's okay for your dad to give you a hug. It's okay for your dad to hug and kiss on you and not be homosexual.
Right.
It's okay for your father, your dad, to say, "Son, I love you." Right. And you feel it when he says it. And not just when it's too late, when they're on their deathbed, when they write it in their will, when they go tell someone else but never tell you, like Arian was saying, that affirmation that is so necessary. Quick story. I wrote about this today. When my son was 3, he's almost 6 now. I had began my journey of entrepreneurism and stopping being a workaholic, and I was continuously speaking this message to other men that were also struggling, that I saw were almost dying and killing themselves to earn money. And one day my wife was having a regular conversation. I'm doing something else, not paying full attention. And she asked my 3-year-old son, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" You know that question we all get asked when we start to be able to speak. What do you want to be when you grow up? And my son says, without hesitation, without stuttering, clear and confident, "I want to be a daddy like Papa." And you can hear that Scooby-Doo voice, that, and automatically, like, wait a minute, did he just say, "I want to be a daddy like Papa"? And you do these things, men. We as fathers, we don't know sometimes what we need until it's there. And that phrase that my son's saying that affirmed what I was doing was the right choice. By choosing him and my family over working 2 jobs and 80-hour work weeks was the right choice. So our sons and our daughters, men, I'm speaking to you loud and clear, the ones that are going to be watching this live and on recording. Our children need us, not just to be physically present, but emotionally present.
Yes.
Because you may set them on a path at a young age to send them to do something great. I mean, great. You don't know who you're raising. So love on them, hug them, kiss them.
Yes.
Speak your vision in front of them. Be that great example. And your children might say something like that too. It made them about melted my heart. You know? If sometimes I don't think my tear ducts work, because if they were, I would have been boo-hooing.
Jason.
Yeah. No, that's good, and I really can relate to that, because the relationship that I have with my kids, it's pretty amazing by design, and it is it's a conscious effort that I make, to just go and do stuff that they want to do, and it's something that it was not a naturally occurring thing for me, because in my mind would be saying, "You got to get this work done. You got to get this work done." My heart would chime in and say, "Yeah," and then when the work is done, which it never is done, when you are into what you're doing, like I'm into what I'm doing, right? It's never done. So at what point are you going to choose to prioritize those that you say that you're working for? So that was my turning point. Is that years ago I got bit by a spider. And so it just went really bad, really fast. And so it was a year plus in just recovering from all the stuff that it did to my system, right? And at the point that I lost the ability to walk, and I was just dragging myself around the house, my wife would leave, and I would think, like, I sure hope that she doesn't come home to a corpse. And and she would be leaving thinking, I sure hope I don't come home to a corpse, right? And so then I started thinking, okay, well, it looks like you're really checking out. So what do you have? Now let's do the balance of the scales of life right now. What do you have to show for all of the toil that you did? What do you have to show for it? Are your kids going to say, wow, yeah, I really knew my dad. I mean, the things that he taught me, the things that he did for me, all of, are they going to be able to say that? Or are they going to be able to say, yeah, he was there, but I just remember he used to always be at the computer or on the phone or closing some business deal or doing something that did not include us. And so I said, okay, and I prayed. I said, Father, if you get me through this, I will change. It was like a Scrooge incident without the meanness, right? I said, I will change what it is that I do. Now, I don't quite know how to do that because I don't know what it is not to work. I realized afterwards that I got my grandfather's tendency, which is the value that I placed in myself was based on the amount of work that I could turn out, And I believe that my mom has that. As a matter of fact, when I look through my family, I see that to be probably the strongest common denominator, is that we tend to really get into what we do because there's some part of our value that is wrapped in that, in producing the best quality thing or producing the most efficient job or whatever it is.
Right.
And so I said, okay, so all of that's going to mean nothing because I'm going to be dead. And so then they're not going to have anything to show for this. So I prayed and I said, if you get me through this, I will change. And you're going to have to help me, though, because I don't know how.
Now, Arian,
Yeah.
you and I were talking offline about the difference between a dad and a father.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and I was sharing with you that I thought father was the key term, because when I grew up and my grandmother, really started taking us to church, my brothers and I, of course, making my mom go there as well as she grew up. And I remember the pastor always saying, when we pray, we always say, our Father,
Right.
because we're addressing God himself, our Father. So when we look at it from the physical, earthly sense of father and dad, I always thought father, because of the Lord's Prayer, was the key term. But as I was reading quite a few posts recently, I ran across an article by at www.differencebetween.info, and they were saying that what I was thinking was backwards. They're saying that a father is the male parent of the child. They share DNA with the child, but he or she may not, or he may not share responsibility in the child's growth and development. Dad is the term of affection and familiarity. Dad is someone who actually participates in the child's growth and development. So then I was like, well, it almost seems like both terms are kind of interchangeable. So what is your take? Do you think there is a key difference between the two terms?
Well, I'll say this, just like I said earlier when we were talking offline, and this is actually the inverse of what Rodney stated earlier, where he basically said that basically what he was saying lines up with what you've come across and what you've read.
Mm-hmm.
And while I respect that aspect, I can just agree to disagree.
Got you.
And the reason being is because of the things that you actually shared. As far as a lot of it is done based on upbringing.
Right.
I was raised in the church, and the thing about it is when I introduced people to my father, just on this particular hangout right now, I've said dad one time in reference to my father, because to me, he is a father. Even though I stated certain things that he did not do as far as sharing the emotional aspect about it, when I think of dad, I think of it from a societal perspective. You hear the term deadbeat dads,
right,
or you hear the term that's just my baby daddy. That's what comes to my mind. Where, and it's not to say that I'm not going to necessarily say I'm backwards, because both of them, it does show that there is a difference. That's the commonality, that it is a difference. It's a different level.
Right.
But I think it's in the eye of the beholder, because if you were raised a certain way where, you reverence Father God, and you're supposed to honor your mother and father for your days to be long. That's how I was raised, growing up in the Baptist church, and now I'm in the Christian church now. And so that's what's always been ingrained in me. But to me, I always felt the opposite of what Rodney said. I feel like anybody could be a dad, and even now you got males not even being dads, you just got them as sperm donors. So for me, I say it like this: any man that does not take care of his responsibilities to his family and to his children, do me a favor, stop calling yourself a man. Because sometimes people get, men, so-called men that are guilty of that, they get lumped in.
Oh, we lost him again.
Mm-hmm. He'll be back.
Yeah, he'll come back, everyone.
That was getting good.
There he is.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're back. Go ahead.
Okay. I lost my train of thought.
You were saying anybody who
Okay. Basically any man who does not take care of his responsibility to his family and to his children, do me a favor, stop calling yourself a man. Because the reality is you have men, quote unquote men, that are guilty of doing that,
Right.
being lumped in the same category as men who are actually fathers to their children, who are in the home, who are actually taking care of their children, who are actually in their children's life and not using child support as their only means of being connected to their children.
Mm-hmm.
They're not deadbeat dads. To me, they're fathers.
Okay, so here's a question though, Arian. With that particular statement, now, where do you draw the line? Say that the father is in the home, but he's not emotionally connected, but he's handling all the other stuff. I think one of the key things here is that in our society, there are so many mixed messages on what it is to be a father, a dad, a man, and all of that, that it becomes a very confusing issue for a person who does not have a model to base their reality off of. So if the man is in the home and he's doing all of the stuff that the fathers of the 50s and earlier or 60s were trained to do or conditioned to do, which is bring home the finances, and that's pretty much all that you have to do, and like Rodney said, and where's my dinner? Okay, that's one thing. They're still considered, a father or a dad or what have you. But your statement right there denotes that, even that person who's not making that emotional connection, that they can't call themselves a man either. I think that it's a matter of the training. I think it's a matter of how they're modeled as opposed to the definitions that we tend to place on things. I think there's a lot of retrofitting that needs to be done.
Okay, can I respond to that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, what you just described actually is the dynamic I grew up in, as I was talking about earlier.
Right.
Where my father actually was born in 51, so he's 63.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandparents, basically, I remember my grandfather, he really didn't show a lot of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just typical father from that time. But for me, even though my father did not teach me that, I know how to show emotion to those that I love. Now, I can't say I know how to show emotion to my children because I don't have children yet.
Mm-hmm.
However, I have dated a woman who has children. And so I have that experience where, dealing with, another man's child, so to speak. And I have an opportunity to see how that does play a role, because growing up with me having my father and then seeing children, especially teenagers, seeing them without a father in the home, that's a dicey subject.
True.
So for me, what it all boils down to is I had to make a decision, because I'm going to be a father someday.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of choices. do I just base how I'm going to be a father based on how my father taught me, which is basically just pay the bills and provide and that's it, but show no emotional stability? Or do I observe, you know, men and have mentors who can actually guide me along the way and basically tell me this is what you should do, this is something that you might want to reconsider, this is something that you should not do at all, and basically find my own path. And so I chose to do the latter. So I learned how to provide that emotional stability. I know how to affirm those I love. And I know that because my significant other tells me that all the time. She's never actually met a guy that actually expresses how he feels openly about her. So as long as I'm able to show that to her, and then when we
Yo.
We always losing when it's getting good.
I know. We always losing when it's good. And unfortunately, we are out of time.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
No, because this is perfect. Because I wanted to leave everybody in suspense. Because as you guys can see, we just getting started. We are just getting started. And we are going to pick this up in part 2. Surprised you didn't know. We have a part 2 to this because this is deep. And there was no way we were going to be able to cover everything everybody wanted to say in 1 hour, you all. So stay tuned because we have a lot more to share. These gentlemen here, I told you, powerhouses, everyone. And this is a topic that everybody needs to hear and everybody needs to talk about. If we want to heal and restore our families, we have to talk about fatherlessness because it's getting out of control. Mm-hmm. So stay tuned to my Facebook fan page at www.facebook.com/Kimberly Collins, The Educated Natural, so you can find out when part 2 of the impact of fatherlessness and the solution as we continue this discussion. Thank you, Rodney. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Arian, for joining me tonight. We have a lot more to do, gentlemen, because I want to pick up right where we left off. Agreed?
Agreed.
All right. Agreed. Because, Rodney, I know you have something to say on this.
Yeah, I was about to wrap it all up, but everybody was, oh, man.
I know it. Thank you for joining me, you all. We're going to get together again for part 2. We'll discuss the date. I will let everybody know. But as always, you guys, make sure you check me out next Wednesday. I have another special guest. And I tell you, as good as this is, I might switch around some stuff. I want to get right back into this. So you all, thank you for tuning in. I'll see you guys next week. And as always, enjoy your journey. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.